Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the AEW Dynamite review for the 12th of October 2022. Dynamite opens Excalibur, welcomes us to the first international episode of Dynamite from Canada. Renee Paquette is welcomed to the broadcast team alongside Tony Schiavone and Taz. Paquette, obviously being Canadian, gets a huge reaction. She introduces Toronto's own Christian Cage along the way here, and ultimately he gets sent back and he guarantees a win with his issues with good old Jungle Boy here, for Luchasaurus, that is. Anyway, which ultimately they put forward a good show here for what they can offer in the Canadian market, which I think in international market, in the first international show, I think it's the first international show in 3 years, is certainly a good thing. So anyway, certainly a stacked lineup and good to see Renee as well. Christian Cage says great to be back, and he guarantees tonight that it will be the same level as the Maple Leafs losing, and then we see Luchasaurus defeating Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Jungle Boy and he uses speed early in the match, and the power of Luchasaurus overwhelms him. Perry does the Christian move of standing on the ropes and then springs over onto the floor. Luchasaurus then grabs a German suplex, clears out a ring attendant, and then goes for clears off the table on the outside. Luchasaurus then lands Perry into the guardrail and hits a back suplex on the side of the apron. The apron spots need to go. They're overdone and unnecessary. Luchasaurus comes back during the break and goes after Perry, misses a corner charge, and then posts himself. Perry then tries to dive through, and Luchasaurus catches him. Perry caught him into the Rana, into the post. Both then go into the apron above the table, and Perry avoids a powerbomb super kick, but Luchasaurus then holds on to the ropes. Perry then hits a sunset flip from the ring to the floor, dives out. Luchasaurus goes through the table. Christian then comes up, leaves the commentary booth, and just tries to distract Perry. Luchasaurus sets up Jungle Boy Flapjacks, turns inside out with a lariat, and then Lucha gets crutched and trapped in Tree of Woe, but he escapes a dive from Perry, and then there's a powerbomb and a chokeslam. For a near fall, Perry counters into the tilt-a-whirl, into the crucifix for a comeback of his own, and ultimately there's a super chokeslam and a burning hammer for the win in the contest by Luchasaurus. Renee Paquette is backstage with Ethan Page and Stokely Hathaway, already better than many of the individuals they have available. Informs Matt Hardy and Private Party that they have now purchased contracts of Quinn and Cassidy, thanks to Jose the assistant, and now part of the firm. Page challenges Isaiah Cassidy on Rampage, and if Cassidy wins, Private Party can leave the firm, but if Page wins, Matt Hardy becomes part of the firm as well. I don't know that anybody cares about any of this, honestly. TNT champion Wardlow and ROH TV champion Samoa Joe defeat Nick Catamaro and QT Marshall. Not quite sure why they're on national television, they being Catamaro and Marshall. Back from the break, QT makes fun of the name Warjoe. He gets interrupted. Solo is handled quickly. Joe then sends out his Marshall with a running senton. Catamaro blocks a muscle buster. Joe sidesteps a diving Marshall. Wardlow turns him inside out with a lariat and launches his opponent in many suplexes. Post-match, Marshall gets a powerbomb after Joe nails a coquina clutch. This really kind of feels like a enhancement match, and I don't know that belongs on national television. Before the powerbomb sympathy can get going, though, Prince Nana interrupts Brian Cage in the Gates of Agony. The brief war with Warjoe, and basically they are sticking to Ring of Honor business and their business with FTR last week. FTR Dax comes out challenging the embassy and says they can ask Warjoe since they just had a match, but a Toronto boy, to team with Sean Spears makes his return to a huge ovation, although I think it's just because he's Canadian, not because it's Sean Spears. And then he might be a babyface based on the reaction. I don't really know. But then we don't really book for babyfaces and heels in AEW. He gets nailed with a big rig by, Solo's in the ring, gets nailed with a big rig by FDR. Ultimately, it is what it is. Anyway, backstage, Shivani is with Chris Jericho, Matt Menard, and Angelo Parker. They talk about the main event. Parker calls Bryan Danielson a liar for stealing Daniel Garcia, trying to break up the family. Menard says last week it hurt them a lot and more than it hurt him. Jericho said he sees Garcia as a little brother and he hasn't taken his calls. Jericho said that tonight isn't about cheating. He's the Lionheart and he'll honor the Ocho. I'm not quite sure where that comes from. Jericho is not my favorite performer except in pay-per-view matches. Swerve Strickland defeats Billy Gunn with the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Acclaimed. Caster does a Canadian-themed rap and gets a good reaction from the crowd. Gunn uses his size. Swerve's speed matches up. Swerve goes after the leg a lot during the break, and the match supposed to the outside. Slingshot knee drop to the floor. Gunn comes back in the ring with a bunch of strikes. For his trouble, Gunn hits a tilt-a-whirl slam, creates a distraction, and regroups for a little bit. Gunn teases the crop chop, but then opens for the scissors instead. Gunn ends up missing the one and only as Swerve gets a roll up and grabs the ropes to steal the victory. Again, I mean, it's not a bad match, and to be fair, in this case, Gunn is over enough that him being on the show makes sense. Post-match, the Acclaimed hit the ring and check on Gunn, teasing the scissors, but Mark Sterling interrupts with Tony Nese. Then they have a document from the USA saying Sterling now owns the saying "Scissor Me" in pro wrestling. All the money from the t-shirts go to him. I guess they're at least trying to give him an card type deal. He says he'll sue. Not a great storyline, but it is what it is. Backstage, Alex Marvez is with MJF. I'm not even sure why he's still employed either. Not MJF, Alex Marvez. That's about the post-match with Wheeler Yuta last week. And MJF said that he's fine to do what he wants as it relates to William Regal and fine with other people, but not with him. The strike's true, and if he didn't have to take Carlton Banks' wardrobe out of the shot, he'd strike. Stokely leaves, and MJF says he got past Regal and said he doesn't know if he was about to shake hands of Yuta post-match. MJF says the crowd and most of the locker room want him dead, but he has no choice but to be a bad guy. And if you don't like it, tough, well, stuff. And then he will be the AEW World Champion. He's a generational talent and obviously a good promo from MJF. Tony Schiavone's in the ring. Plugs next Tuesday is AEW, or next Wednesday's AEW World Title Challenger with challenger Hangman Page. And then John Moxley, Excalibur, informs of RJ City, told him that February 24th, 1968, Jimi Hendrix closed the show building with Wild Things, so it's kind of an interesting thing. Moxley said after 3 years, it feels good to be back in Toronto. He's always have a target on his back as world champion. Most crumble under the pressure, but some faster than others. Moxley then says his job is to he requires him to be ruthless and that he loves that part of the job. He also mentions that Hangman Page's name, and Page walks out. Page said last week, Moxley said it meant the world to him, puts over Moxley as a decent champion, father, and husband. MJF is shown watching all of this with the poker chip. Page ignores him and asks if Moxley views him as a kid, which Moxley agrees. He says he doesn't view Page as the same guy who knocked him off the ladder 1 year ago, and he doesn't think Page has the guts to pull the trigger and do the right thing. Page then said he's not the same guy. He's hesitant. He said he went for the trios title with his best friends. While old friends have disappeared, Page is anxious, depressed, but he's still here. And as a man, Page said that, like Moxley, he's lost loved ones, but his father and husband, and he started punching himself in the face, yelling that he's a man. Page doesn't care if Moxley's family is there. Next week, he'll do whatever it takes to be the champion again. Maybe there's a heel turn here somewhere. Who knows? Despite that being a decent promo, the crowd wasn't really into it, and they chant for MJF. He's more over than anyone they have right now, and they need to pull the trigger on him winning the championship maybe at the next pay-per-view. Page bumped shoulders with Moxley as he walked past. Abbreviated version of the ROH title match. Control centers shown, and off we go. Chris Jericho with Matt Menard and Angelo Parker defeat Bryan Danielson to retain the Ring of Honor Championship. Ian Riccaboni and Lord William Regal on commentaries. Danielson kicks away a handshake from Jericho to begin. Jericho opts to fire off a bunch of strikes. Slingshot, and Jericho goes to the outside. Danielson wipes him out with a dive, and then there's a target at the midsection until both men connect with 10 corner punches. Can't believe that's still a thing in 2022. Danielson then regains control by going after the ribs and a roundhouse kick to the head for a near fall. Jericho mounts his comeback and then goes to commercial break with a DDT. Danielson sent to the outside and wiped out by a springboard crossbody. Jericho goes to the top, but's cut off with an avalanche, butterfly suplex, and the label lock. Danielson then tries to reposition himself, but Jericho counters with the Walls of Jericho. Danielson then countered into a Walls of Jericho of his own, which doesn't please the Canadian crowd. Jericho that escapes into small package, but off we go. Then we see hammer and anvil elbows pounding down until Jericho rises up where Danielson's on his feet. Hits a vicious Death Valley driver. Lion Salt misses as Danielson connects with a diving knee. Gets it a couple times. But on the third, Jericho counters into the Codebreaker for near fall. Danielson backflips out of the corner, and referee Paul Turner pulls Danielson back. Jericho then waits a long time. Daniel Garcia hits the ring and goes for the title. Jericho then shoves into the Bushido knee from Danielson, and then he's turned and clobbered with the ROH title by Garcia, and ultimately Jericho steals the match again. Post-match, Garcia hands the title to Jericho and cheers with the ROH Spear title. Wheeler Yuta hits the ring with William Regal and has a stare down with Garcia. So this is actually, and I'll say this, Jericho, when he's in there with somebody who he's not trying to outshine, is really good. Danielson is that guy, and I enjoy him in that role, but other roles, not such a big Jericho fan. Backstage, Renee Paquette is with Nyla Rose, Marina Shafir, and Vicky Guerrero. Nyla makes a Judge Dredd reference as she said she's holding the TBS title. Anna Jay interrupts and challenges for the title match on Friday. Title isn't even hers, so I don't know where that's coming from. Interim Women's Champion Toni Storm and Hikaru Shida defeat Jamie Hayter and Dr. Britt Baker. Crowd is behind Hayter, who is fast into an opening sequence with Shida. Storm makes a quick tag and beats down Hayter. Baker stops Storm from going for the sweet chin music, or sweet cheek music, which allows Hayter to nail Storm. Shida comes back, runs wild, and flattens Baker with a jumping knee in the corner punches. Too many jumping knees, back-to-back matches, people. Anyway, Hayter tries to break it up, and ultimately it goes to the break and suffers a side suplex on the apron from Shida. Baker is suplexed into Hayter, and Shida hits the Meteora off the ropes for a 2 count. Baker blocks the Kintara as Hayter lays out Shida with a backbreaker. Storm then counters a backbreaker into the Cazadora Bulldog. Shida then goes back and eats a double sidekick and a curve stomp on Baker for a 2 count. Storm hits a corner DDT and a Storm Zero on Baker, but Hayter tackles Storm into Shida, making the cover. Hayter then sends outside. Storm then hits another Tornado DDT. Baker hits briefly with the lockjaw on Shida and then rolls her up for 2 count and hits a spinning kick, spinning Falcon Arrow on Baker, and both ladies trade pin attempts until Shida gets a high stack and a flash pin. Action-packed match, and both go at it pretty aggressively here. AEW Rampage for the 14th. World Champion Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli versus the Butcher and the Blade with the Bunny. Ethan Page with Isaiah Cassidy. Nyla Rose, Anna Jay, and FTR, and Shawn Spears against Brian Page and the Gates of Agony. Not necessarily a huge fan of seeing the Blade and the Butcher in that match, but it is what it is. The rest looks okay, although Nyla Rose and Anna Jay, Nyla Rose just doesn't connect with me, but whatever. The AEW match for the Dynamite on the 18th, World Champion Jon Moxley against Hangman Adam Page, the former World Champion, and interim Women's Champion Toni Storm against Hikaru Shida. We'll hear from MJF, and Renee Paquette interviews Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta. Orange Cassidy defeats Pock for the All-Atlantic Championship, which is a bit of a surprise. I don't know if Cassidy has Canadian ties, maybe. Just weird that happens here, but it is a good payoff. Cassidy misses the orange punch out of the early stages and goes from kicks and turns inside out by Pock. Cassidy then hands in pockets and makes fun of him. Pock then takes too long with his shenanigans, and so Pock is in from control during the break. Cassidy's lifeless body is on the ramp and gets hit with a nasty tombstone piledriver as Pock brings referee Bryce back into the ring, and then there's a count. Cassidy then basically comes back a little bit. Pock then goes for the hammer on the outside, but drops a diving DDT through the ropes to the floor, back inside. Pock is spiked with another DDT and eats the orange punch for a close near fall. Cassidy then goes to the top, but Pock rolls to the outside of the ring, where he plants with a beach break. Pock bloodies orange punch, and then we go into the suplex, into the brutalizer, but Cassidy gets the ropes again, and then the right ear of Pock is eventually bleeding, and it's bleeding pretty badly. Goes for the hammer again, and gets stopped by the ring attendant, who revealed himself to be Danhausen. Cursing Pock, Danhausen eats a punch. Referee takes the hammer from Pock, who has another hammer hidden, but Cassidy hits the orange punch. Bryce tells Cassidy not to do it, as Pock gets a roll up for the 2 count. Cassidy pops up, hits another orange punch, and then hits a home run punch for the win, and gets the title. Beautiful main event. Cassidy is over, and the show ends with the best friends celebrating the championship win. Ultimately, a really good show. AEW does have the ability to do this when it counts, and I just wish they did it more often, in all honesty. AEW can hit on all cylinders some of the time, but there's still too many people that they're trying to, I guess, feature, and they've got to find a more different cadence to the program as a whole. So anyway, we'll be back with more right after this.